Tantor Audio, a division of recorded books, presents A New Story of Wholeness, an experiential guide for connecting the human family, by Robert Atkinson. Foreword by Jean Houston. Afterword by Deepak Chopra. Narrated by Brian P. Craig. Foreword. Reweaving Our Stories. Jean Houston, Ph.D. In this time of whole system transition, we can no longer afford to live as half-light versions of ourselves. Current complexities call for greater and wiser use of our capacities, a more attuned playing of the instrument we have been given. We can now glimpse the possibility of a planetary society heralding the end of ancient enmities and the birth of new ways of using our common humanity and its various cultures. Worldwide, societies are crying for help with the needed transformation of organizations and institutions. We need new ways of looking at and relating to each other, new methods of supporting each other in serving humanity. The world can thrive only if we can grow. We can only create this possible society if people learn to be the possible humans we are meant to be. We need the potential of the whole human race and the particular genius of every culture if we are going to survive our time. In the new world just ahead, all things will be understood as interconnected. Our ability to dream each other's dreams and experience each other's biographies will be part of this interpenetrating wave of our common memory. We are being rescaled to planetary proportions as we become resonant and intimate with our own depths. This social evolution requires more social artists, those who bring fresh vision to the community, who seek to transform all levels of society, who are contemplative creators, acting in both silence and service, helping people ignite their potential. Social artists are those who recognize this interconnectedness and give voice or creative expression to its presence amongst us all. These social artists, especially those conscious storytellers Robert Atkinson speaks of in his introduction to this vital book, are needed to bridge the unknown abyss that separates a dying era from one being born. Creative social artistry is contemplative, synergizing inner and outer realities necessary for transformation on all levels. This process assists visionary endeavors, unleashes the human spirit, and gives us access to remarkable world-making patterns. Beneath the surface of consciousness, in all of us, creative ideas and solutions are always waiting, ready to bloom into consciousness. In a world ripe for healing, social artists are the healers of society. They don't seek to fix the old Adam, but to understand the whole Adam. They are motivated by the world being a training ground for social unfoldment and inspired to see the healing as creative and evolutional. Evolutional healing is built upon knowing there is somewhere to go, something to become. Healing is making whole. It brings about a move from a limited condition to a new level of a higher order of mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual well-being. Wounds are experienced as doorways to higher consciousness and more evolved forms. As healers, social artists help us access our inner wisdom, moving us beyond the polarities of left versus right, us against them, and promoting cooperation, understanding, and networks of mutual aid. This challenge to the very canons of our human condition requires us all becoming evolutionary partners with each other. In the intracultural and educational work we've done in many countries, we try to discover the main stories, myths, legends, and teaching tales that underlie the spirit of the culture in which we are working. Then we present them as the backdrop upon which to weave our work in human development. We find that people go further as well as faster and deeper if their learning is attached to a story, and most especially if that story is a key myth of their culture. In India, we have worked with the Ramayana, a Sanskrit epic of ancient India, and the life of Gandhi. In Australia, with certain Aboriginal creation myths. In England, with stories of Percival, Gawain, and the other knights of the Round Table's search for the Grail. In Bangladesh, with the poetry of Tagore and other Bengali poets. One feels instinctively when a new story is needed, when the old stories no longer speak to the current reality. What we need is for stories to be re-mythologized and rewoven in the light of today's necessities. This has always been the job of culture, to discover again and on a deeper level the meaning and relevancy of the once and future story. For without story, a culture becomes denatured and demoralized. Reweaving our stories in the light of today's necessities is exactly what this insightful and much-needed book offers, in identifying all the motifs and archetypes for discovering the relevancy of the new story of our evolving consciousness. We are at that stage where the real work of humanity begins. Partnering with creation in the recreation of ourselves and in the restoration of the biosphere, we can bring into being a culture of kindness, where we are all reconnected and fully engaged in our world. Think of yourself as a social artist, a conscious storyteller, following the creative force to bring others together, to do good in every situation that arises. Prologue: A Pattern of Wholeness. Perhaps there is a pattern set up in the heavens for one who desires to see it, and having seen it, to find one in himself. Plato. A pattern perhaps found in the heavens and in us emerges as all things in the universe are seen as tied together, operating according to an overarching principle of wholeness. Derived from a holistic worldview of balance and unity within the whole, this is expressed in the Hermetic principle of that which is below corresponds to that which is above, and that which is above corresponds to that which is below, all things accomplishing the miracles of the one thing. This principle integrates all levels of reality from the macrocosm, the universe as a whole, to the microcosm, that is, the human being, a miniature universe, and is upheld by the latest science and the earliest spiritual wisdom. It bridges the divide between duality and non-duality, confirms that the individual and the collective mirror one another in their essential nature and processes, and explains how all things are interconnected. Imagine what it may have been like for the first indigenous people seeking wisdom to live by. They seemingly observed a pattern set up in the heavens, and wove this understanding of wholeness into the heart of the stories they told. Now known as myths, their ancient stories established great truths and held communities together. Whether by metaphor, symbol, pattern, or repetition, their narratives offered a unifying framework for living within the flow of the natural world around them. These were unitive narratives, essential to their individual and collective well-being. Across many millennia, however, Communities expanded, spread out, and became more diverse, and experienced conflict and disorder. Out of this discord emerged divisive narratives, framed by a consciousness of duality that maintained separation and challenged the trajectory of the evolutionary impulse. Most of humanity's history has consisted of competing narratives fighting for the minds and hearts of people everywhere. As we approach a consciousness of global integration, a new story of our wholeness is needed to frame this emerging interconnectedness. Humanity has arrived at a time when it is necessary for our own survival to come together again through unitive narratives. Such narratives would represent the unified nature of reality. Because reality always has and will continue to exist as a unified field, and the earliest mystics and seers saw this and incorporated this understanding into their stories to live by, the story of wholeness is not new. What is new is that the spiraling effect of the evolutionary impulse and our own evolving consciousness is becoming clearer by bringing us back to this innate archetypal understanding. More of us now are becoming aware of this as a new story of wholeness. This book offers a new way of getting to and looking at the wholeness that always is. It does this by pulling together many threads of unitive narratives to identify their common pattern. Stories that unify convey an inherent wholeness across all life forms, the natural world, and the entire creation. This understanding leads to the realization of a unitive consciousness, the goal of an evolving consciousness. Unitive narratives invite us to embrace the wisdom of the complementarity, balance, and wholeness of seemingly opposing forces. This enables us to achieve unity in the diversity of forms and expressions we encounter on our way to a consciousness of wholeness. Binaries like feminine and masculine become more valued when they are viewed as human attributes rather than as a reason to divide us along gender lines. Unitive narratives are needed now more than ever to lead us through a process of shifting the focus from individual well-being to collective well-being. In our time, the part no longer takes precedence over the whole. Both are completely interdependent. Exclusive emphasis upon any one part endangers the whole. The purpose of this book is to provide the means for identifying and telling our own story of this wholeness as it emerges from a unitive consciousness. The creative process of exploring and expressing our own experience of wholeness gives us all a deeper commitment to ensuring Earth's well-being as a living organism, reveals to us the necessity of collaborative relationships and dynamic co-evolutionary partnerships on a planetary scale, and confirms for us that our personal and collective evolution of consciousness depends on the stories we tell. The pattern set up in the heavens and embedded within us constantly assists our conscious evolution and confirms our wholeness on all levels. It encompasses a process of transformation that helps us move from beings endowed with an inherent potential to beings having fulfilled that potential. A new story of wholeness was written to illustrate not only the universality of this pattern, but also, more importantly, to guide us in becoming the whole beings we are meant to be, who recognize that this inner transformation serves a greater purpose in preparing us to be transformers of society. This book provides a clearly focused set of guidelines that helps facilitate the process of personal and collective transformation already well underway. In The Story of Our Time, From Duality to Interconnectedness to Oneness, a 2017 Nautilus Book Award winner, I offered a narrative of the evolution of consciousness framed by 7 unifying principles drawn from the world's wisdom traditions that traces love's unifying power guiding the collective transformation occurring now. While the story of our time shows how humanity is currently approaching the next step in its collective maturation, by providing an overview of the larger big picture narrative unfolding all around us, a new story of wholeness shows how the personal experience of this timeless pattern leads us directly into the process of collective transformation by guiding us toward contributing to the good of the whole. What the story of our time elucidates on the collective level, a new story of wholeness facilitates on the personal level. By inviting you to identify, express, and share your own story of transformation as a vital part of the process of global transformation. Together, both illustrate how collective and individual transformation are so interdependent upon each other that they cannot be separated. The introduction of a new story of wholeness provides an overview for identifying the qualities and characteristics of a new narrative of the evolutionary impulse. It unpacks the various formats of the core pattern of transformation designed for remembering and living into our innate wholeness. It inspires us to conceptualize our own journey from separation to union, from the many to the one, toward a recognition of our inherent wholeness. Following this, a blueprint for living our story of wholeness, a rich summary of the microcosm of a pattern set up in the heavens, serves as a reference tool throughout the entire process of telling your own version of this journey to wholeness. The 3 main parts of the book are: 1. The meaning of the process, with 3 chapters looking at the primary principles of evolution, consciousness, and wholeness. 2. The pattern of the process, with 3 chapters explaining its parts: Call to Wholeness, Path of Purification, and Return to Wholeness. 3. The Guide, with a personal example to consider, keys for the process, and writing exercises providing all the needed roadmaps, tools, and understandings for identifying and telling your own story of living into wholeness. This practical step-by-step process incorporates reflective writing exercises consisting of key points, prompts, a worksheet of personal experiences for all the archetypes and motifs, and instructions for compiling a narrative for each part of the pattern. The guide provides everything needed for a do-it-yourself writing workshop. In addition, a meditation for living into wholeness wraps up the guide with a focused way to achieve the goal. A new story of wholeness equips you to participate in the story of our time, a global movement of transformation leading to the unity in diversity of the entire human family, by identifying those experiences in your life that place you on a path to wholeness. Writing your own version of this new story of our evolving consciousness brings clarity and focus as you begin to understand how your life's unfolding is part of something much larger. With the blueprint as our compass to point the way, we see not only the essence of the whole narrative pattern itself, but also how our own experiences follow this ancient, universal, and at the same time new narrative we can all reclaim in this critical moment. Throughout the process, we are guided to become writers of our own unitive narrative, engaging in the important work of conscious storytelling. The key terms used throughout include myth, a metaphorical representation of a truth to live by. Story, a weaving together of a sequence of events that may or may not be true. Narrative, the form, structure, or pattern a myth or story is told in, usually connecting a system of personal or collective stories that may or may not be completed. And unitive narrative, a truthful personal or collective story of living into the wholeness of the unified field of existence all around us. Wholeness is experienced in the qualities of completeness, harmony, balance, and unity within all the parts of a whole. Applying the principle of as above, so below, all levels of whole systems coexist as interdependent subsystems within the whole, and are designed to maintain their own wholeness within that greater whole as a complete wholeness in motion. As a microcosm of the whole, the human body is one such subsystem consisting of an organization of organs, all connected one to another, designed to function as a whole, each in harmony and balance with all the others, maintaining a fully functioning whole being. Cooperation is the principle that governs the functioning of the whole. In the same way, as the health of the body is contingent upon the health and wholeness of every cell and every organ, so is the health of society contingent upon the unity and wholeness of the entire human family, both locally and globally. Wholeness is the remedy for an ailing humanity. As Baha'u'llah stated, regard the world as the human body, which, though at its creation whole and perfect, hath been afflicted, through various causes, with grave disorders and maladies. The mightiest instrument for the healing of all the world is the union of all its peoples. We are the storytelling species. Let us reclaim our identity as whole beings, living in harmony with things all around us, and share widely our deeply lived stories of wholeness to bring us back together as a human family. Introduction: a new story of our evolving consciousness. The evolution of existence is one. The divine order is one. All beings, great and small, are subject to one law and one order. Abdul-Baha. Imagine all things in all of existence making up an interconnected whole, a oneness in which everything in the whole is an inseparable part. All things are of this wholeness in motion. Nothing is ever separate from the whole. In this divine order, everything is dependent upon what Teilhard de Chardin called a single energy at play in the world. This holistic view of reality, with all things above corresponding to all things below, and all things accomplishing the miracles of the one thing, renders all seeming differences and distinctions imaginary. Everything here is so interdependent that apparent opposites, like yin and yang, feminine and masculine, are complementary interrelated halves of the same whole, balancing, integrating, uniting, and transcending their own duality. Lao Tzu calls this wholeness of existence the nameless, which is all there was at the beginning of heaven and earth. In this original wholeness, as seen through a unitive consciousness, all things are sacred, revered, in harmony with all other things, without divisions, and in perfect relationship. In this world of wholeness, such a unitive awareness serves to maintain and embed a consciousness of wholeness within us. It is central to indigenous wisdom traditions, a state of consciousness sought by all contemplative practices, and a unifying field of awareness available to all. Now imagine the story of Earth's origins. All existence was intended to remain forever whole. Adding intrigue to mystery, however, the evolution of existence took a detour in the Garden of Eden with the eating of the forbidden fruit, or in another version of this narrative, in Greek mythology, with the opening of Pandora's box. Reimagine, if you will, this story as asserting our own individual will over a greater will, not only bringing forth an archetype that introduced separation and opposition into the world, but also signaling humanity's fall from wholeness. This separation of the nameless and the named, the temporal and the eternal, fragmented the named into 10,000 things, as Lao Tzu noted. This fall from wholeness created two types of narratives, those that divide and those that unite. After millennia of stories focusing on duality and maintaining separation, what the world needs now is unitive narratives that will lead us through a process of returning to wholeness. This will be how all things are remembered as interconnected in one grand system of life in the cosmos. This book identifies and highlights the key elements of many unitive narratives, bringing them all into one storyline, and makes it evident that we are always integral components of that whole. It provides a way of remembering where we came from, who we are, and where we are going, while offering a step-by-step framework for reclaiming and living with a consciousness of wholeness. Could a reunion of many unitive storylines be possible simply because there is only one timeless and universal narrative pattern shared by all of them? Could this be the same pattern Plato envisioned as set up in the heavens and within us as well? Embedded within this pattern could be a genetic design to assist our evolution of consciousness. If so, it would bring about needed transformations to keep us on track, expand our consciousness toward a vision of the wholeness of all things, and keep our focus on this inherent wholeness all at the same time, while also keeping humanity on its evolutionary trajectory. Imagine now a world in which the explicit purpose of life is to realize the wholeness of the entire creation, to serve the good of the whole, to live our lives in wonderment of and in harmony with that whole. The Surah from the Quran, Chapter 2, Ayah 156, with variations in many sacred traditions, "We all come from God, and unto Him do we return," often recited when a loved one dies, is much more than showing patience in God's supreme power. On a mystical level, this saying encourages a non-dual awareness within a duality-dominated world. Though we live in a realm of apparent separation, it assures us of a reunion while at the same time giving us a process of moving toward a consciousness of this underlying wholeness. This mystic return to our source of being suggests an outline or structure for living a life of purpose and meaning within a pattern framed by a process of knowing, forgetting, and remembering. According to several sacred traditions, we innately know we have come from wholeness, but we are born into a realm that eventually causes us to forget what we once knew, and we spend our lives in search of what will enable us to remember what we once knew. Our consciousness has its source in unity. This is where our search is designed to lead us back to. Remembrance not only gets us in touch with our soul, the source of that knowing, but it is also at the heart of all spiritual practice and is designed to remind us of our changeless nature. Remembrance is a meditation creating
Sample complete. Ready to continue?